Hello and welcome back to another tutorial. This one is definitely an important update for 2025 season at the NCAE Cyber Games. As many past competitors have known and people who have been doing the MiniHack have seen in our sandbox environment, we've been using a CentOS router as a way to give you a bit of a Linux challenge to satisfy that portion of our competition. And as we know here, CentOS is officially dead, at least that particular version. It's end of life, so press F to pay respects. But it gave our team a chance to reflect and consider, okay, as we migrate to some system that's going to be new for our router this particular season, what are we going to do? What are our thoughts on this? And we've ended up going with a completely different system. We did not decide to go with something like Rocky or Ubuntu or Alma. And we're incorporating this now into our sandbox MiniHack experience, and definitely something you're going to have for the competition season. So in this particular video, I'm going to show you some of the basics, at least enough to get started with this thing so it's not completely fresh, and I definitely recommend practice this and look through some of the further documentation. So if we take a look over at my screen share here, you'll see I've deployed a MiniHack, and this is something similar to what you'll see if you deploy one of our MiniHack 2025 versions. We will still allow you to deploy with the CentOS if for whatever reason you want to give that a try too, but the MiniHack will now, hopefully, you'll be able to see where it says MikroTik router. That's the part that's going to be new and will be incorporated in your competition season starting 2025. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the MikroTik router, I mean, this is something you could easily just do an internet search for. I did something here like MikroTik router wiki or help, and it's pretty easy to get to their getting started documentation. They've got a lot of good documentation here, and obviously there's just way too much to learn. So it's like, what's the crash course? What are the basics? What's this going to look like? That's really what this tutorial video is all about in the context of the sandbox and in the MiniHack, and then obviously by extension the context of your actual competition. So all right, so like I said, I've deployed the MiniHack. Let's just quickly remember what our objectives and goals were of the MiniHack. So then as I go to complete this MiniHack, I'll see how this works in the context of our MikroTik router. So why don't we start with like the normal MiniHack instructions where you say, hey, let's start with our CLI external box. I'll open up my CLI external box that I just turned on here and get logged in. Let me go and log in with the sandbox and password credentials. So then I can at least figure out what network am I supposed to be on and all good stuff like that. And then we can specifically go and tackle head on my MikroTik router portion. So if you remember, you check your IP address. Remember for this, you're on a 172.20 network. This is a /16. My CLI box is .02. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and visit our scoreboard, just like the instructions say. And I'll go ahead and visit my what is it? The 172.20.0.1. Yep, that's it. We're looking for the very first bookmark. We'll get you there and get logged in. So then we can see this, of course, and then really focus in on the new router portion. But I want to make sure that I do that and I don't have to go changing my IP addresses a whole bunch, because every time we deploy our MiniHack, you should get randomly assigned some new team number, and that, of course, will be important for achieving our objectives. So we'll keep in mind it's this blue portion here, the team router. That's the part that's changed. That's the part that's updated. That's the part that will no longer be CentOS and is now going to be MikroTik instead. So we'll remember we got to do on our external side a 172.20, then our team number, which for me in the context of this video is 213. .1 for the router on the external side, and then on the internal side it's a 192.168.213.1. And then of course the objective is to get a web server up and running behind this so it can check in with a scoring server, and we've got some supporting CLI machines that allow you to just to be able to be used as administrative type devices to check in and see how things are doing from an external perspective. So, okay, so that's what I've got right now. Why don't we go over to the router and see how can I start moving in this direction from a scoreboard perspective, see if I can make these lights turn green. Remember, that's a big part of what this is about. My router's offline, none of the forwarding is working. How do I do that in the context of a MikroTik router? So, okay, so let's go back to the MikroTik router and see what we're up against. Now, you can access this through a variety of ways. We'll give you things like an extern session. You can just do a no VNC session so that you can see it here manually through the browser. You don't need to install any other tools. If it looks like the thing has fallen asleep, you just kind of hit enter to wake it up. Yeah, let's go ahead and go full screen on this. And so now we can just say, okay, we're logged in. I've got my MikroTik login. How do I get logged into the thing, and how do I do stuff with this? You can see that, at least to start, like, yep, you're working at the CLI. All right, so there's no GUI to this, at least on this particular end. And you're going to have to be working off of some of these really critical commands to get started. So default creds, default login, you can expect these particular routers to ship with something simple like admin. All right, so admin should be our basic login, and the default password for this to start very likely is blank if it hasn't been assigned already. So I just clicked enter. I did not type anything for the password. It'll give you the opportunity to take a look at the license. I've already done that. Maybe you should do that a little bit on your own time, so I'll say no. But on your initial login especially, you'll notice that it will want you to change and set a password. So I've got something as admin as my username. I'm going to make it real simple for this particular video, make sure I don't screw it up. I'm just going to have password, just like the rest of my other systems. Obviously, in the context of the competition, like red team is going to own you instantly if you do something like that. So yeah, don't have that for the competition, but at least just while we're looking here and testing, this is what we're looking at. So okay, so I've got admin and password as my basic credentials on this system. I'm logged in. How do I check to see what this thing is all about, and how do I bring it on the network? I could see from the scoring my router was not online. It was not returning any kind of ping. So similar to the previous MiniHack, yeah, you don't have anything configured. Well, let's start there. How do I at least see my initial configuration? You do have to learn some CLI commands to get this thing working. And some of your basic commands that you're going to want to know are things like IP space address address space print, PRINT. And that will tell you what current IP addresses have been assigned to your device. And you kind of see it return blank. So keep in mind, this is set up to be a router, which means if we take a look at the hardware side of things, it's like, yeah, I do actually have a net 0 and net 1. There are two hardware network devices. And what this is telling me is that from a software perspective, nothing has been configured. So that's what it will look like when you've got a device, it's got Ethernet connections, but nothing has been configured. So IP address space print, that's going to be a real good command for us to know. A next good command is going to be able to see, okay, I've got the pieces of hardware. I can see logically that they're not defined, but I am going to want to know specifically when I do the assignment, what are the names of the pieces of hardware? And so another really critical command here is we're going to have to learn interface space print. All right, so you see there's a bunch of these print commands to get different pieces of information. And so what this is showing is those two pieces of hardware that were assigned in Proxmox, that net 0 and that net 1, what are the corresponding names for them? Because this will be a useful way we can look at assigning IP addresses to this thing. So you can see the default names, at least with my cloned out version here, it says Ether 3 and Ether 4. And then, of course, I've got a loopback just like many other devices. So this is quite synonymous with other systems that might come with like an ETH0 or an ENS18. All right, well, in this particular device, we've got Ether 3 and we've got Ether 4. And that's what corresponds on this side to our net 0 and our net 1 device. And you can always take a look at like, okay, here's the MAC addresses. It says VirtIO. All right, you can look at the MAC address on this side. Come over to here, look at the MAC address on this side, and just kind of confirm which one goes with which. But nevertheless, this is going to be something you're going to want to know. You're going to want to know the names of your actual interfaces. And that's going to be a critical part to bringing them online, getting them IP addresses assigned. So having said that, let's just go ahead and see what it looks like to assign an address. And this will be another /IP address command. And from here, instead of doing a print, we can now do an add address equals, and then say, okay, what's the address that I want to be adding on to this particular device? Now we got to think back to what was I trying to do in the context of a MiniHack? I want to bring one online on the 172.2.0 network, and I happen to be team 213 if my memory serves me right, and I could put my router at .1. This, of course, was on a /16 network. All right, and then the last important piece here, and maybe I'll be sure to kind of do this and hide my camera here for a second so you can see the full command, and emphasize that this, I also have to specify what interface am I assigning this to. So that's where I would say interface equals, and then we'll say, how about the first one, the Ether 3. All right, so that will be a critical command to assigning the external address to my Ether 3 device. I hit enter, it doesn't yell at me, it doesn't give me any errors, so that's pretty useful. And why don't we actually confirm that it worked? All right, we could take a quick look and see if I hit a couple up arrows. If you don't want to be typing things, yeah, you can just hit some up arrows and go back to my IP address print command and see, it's not empty this time. I've now successfully assigned my 172.2.0.213.1 on a /16 to my Ether 3 device. So why don't I just take a moment and check and see what does that look like from the other device's perspective? All right, so if I jump back over to my Kali machine, this thing's got ping. Let's see if it actually comes online. If I say ping 172.20.213.1, it's like, hey, yeah, it's there. This is something that my CLI machine now has visibility to. And vice versa. If you want to test things from the router's perspective, this thing does have ping. You just got to remember a slash command. So slash ping, and then say the IP address that you want to ping. And if you remember the CLI machine is also on the 172.20, and I believe that one is 0.2. Let's double check and see what it looks like. Like, yeah, that's a good ping. That's something that's responding. So you can see it's responding almost instantly, which is great. Just for an example, let's see what it would look like to ping something that's not there. So you can see what the error looks like. Like, I don't believe there's anything at .3. So 172.20.03. If I try pinging that, you can see, yeah, on the far right, let me hide again. You can see that this is what it looks like. You're looking for that status, that timeout. All right, so on the far right, you're getting a timeout in that column, and Control-C to interrupt this. And that's, of course, how we can now just confirm from the router perspective, from the CLI perspective, the networking's there, things are now working, and what it looks like to get an error. So, yeah, it's not a full Linux environment in the sense of all the commands you might be used to, but it still has a lot of the functionality that you're thinking of and things you might want to test and try internally. So why don't we come full circle and do the routing as well on the internal side of the network? Let's try that IP address command again. So maybe I'll hit a few up arrows and think, okay, this is my basic command. Now, how do I want to modify this to make it work for the internal side? It's like, well, I want to be on the Ether4 interface. And for that one, I don't want a 172. Rather, I want a 192.168. And then, of course, I still keep my 213.1 and emphasize that that particular network is a /24, not a /16. And then by running this command, we should now be able to configure both the internal as well as the external address. And of course, I can confirm this by checking out my print statement again, my /IP address print, and go, hey, now I've got two of them, right? I was able to configure both the internal address and the external address to my network. And so now when I bring on a machine, either on the internal side or the external side, my router is now reachable. So this is a great first step to being able to bring the thing online. From here, now the question becomes, okay, I can see how I can assign addresses, but that's not the end of the story as far as routing is concerned. And so why don't we take that next step and start to see what's the routing portion look like, as well as remembering we want to do this in the context of a MiniHack, okay? So how about this? How about we take a look at bringing another device online on the internal network? Because at least on the MiniHack, there's nothing that's online on the internal side. And so to do that, I think the best way to do it would be to take a look at the Ubuntu machine. The Ubuntu machine is where we should be bringing on a web server, right? Bringing this online on for our website to make the lights go green. And so for that, let's take a look at bringing this thing on. And while this thing's firing up, why don't we actually double check our lights? Because I think by bringing online the web server, or excuse me, the router, this should now allow our first light. Yeah, we got our first one by bringing the router online. So that's just getting the IP address working on the correct address. That's what gets us to check that box. Okay, cool. So one of our next steps, of course, is going to be to make sure we've got a web server online here. But we'll first just double check the networking. So if you remember this particular machine, this one ships with no IP address, and with it being an Ubuntu build, it's using something like NetPlan. So let's go ahead and at least assign an IP address and make sure our internal IP address scheme is working. So I could do something like sudo nano /etc/netplan and check out that netplan, the 01 network manager.all.yaml file. Yeah, that's the one that we want. Confirm my password of just password and go, okay, how about assigning an IP address to this? We'll add something static into this. And if you remember how to do this, let's see if I can do it off the top of my head. We'll do Ethernets. And then a couple spaces here and say, yeah, the name of my adapter was ENS18. And then I can specify my dash addresses. Whoops, just addresses, addresses. Let's spell it correctly. And then finally under here is where we do our dash, and then finally the 192.168.213. And if we remember, according to the topology, this was something that was available in our CLI machine. We're supposed to be bringing our website online at 192.168, our team number, and then .2. And this one, again, is a /24. So let's do that. And one of the last critical things you want to be doing with this is making sure that you tell it where traffic is going to be going. So we definitely want to be setting a gateway for our version 4, and that will be at the 192.168.213.1. Whoop, 213.1, right? That's where our router is going to be. So let's save that, Control X, Y, enter, and let's apply it with a sudo netplan apply and see if I made any typos while doing it. No, it doesn't yell at me. If I check my IP address, I should now be brought online on 213.2. And with any luck, I'll be able to ping my router, 192.168.213.1, and the ping responds. So we've got something brought online on both the internal and the external side. So that's great. Am I going to have any more lights green yet, right? If we remember what the next goal is to be able to have the web port actually open and responding. And so remember, in the context of the MiniHack, that means the scoring server needs to be able to send traffic through the router, get to the website, and the website's got to be there. The website has to be online, and we've obviously have not addressed that yet. We got to bring a few of those things happening, both the routing as well as bringing the web server online before we're going to get that light to go green. Okay, so let's see about how we could do both of those things. So let's bring the website online so then it's available. One of the things to check for this is to just do a basic service check and see systemctl status Apache 2. And the critical thing here is just to realize, hey, Apache 2 is there, but it is currently inactive. It's not started. So let's give it a kick. Sudo systemctl, maybe restart Apache 2. And by doing that, now if we check our status, we should see, yep, the status is now active. Things are online and running. That was one of the things with the MiniHack is you start with the website, all your services there, but the service is not currently running. So you got to start it. And if we check this now in a browser, I could try visiting my own IP address. And prior to this, I'm sure this would not have loaded. But now that I've given myself an IP address and brought this online, it's like, yep, I now have the content that's actually available on my website. And this is, again, very similar to at least the basic idea of what you're going to do in the context of the competition. So, but of course, that is not enough to get the light green. Like the website is there, but the part that's not happening, of course, is the routing. And so that's the part that we want to take a look at next. Now, you can do the routing at the command line with this particular type of router, the MikroTik router. If you go into the docs to go into the wiki, or if I showed you some magic commands, yes, you could do that. But part of the reason why we specifically chose this router is it also comes with a web interface. And so using my external device, this CLI device, I'm going to go visit the router 172.20.213.1. And I'm going to visit it on port 8080. So if you go to not the default port, but rather to port 8080, you'll see, it actually has a website that it's running, which gives me a GUI. So woohoo, let's check out the GUI and see how this works. So if you remember from earlier, my login of admin, the default password that I set to was just password, something simple. So whatever password that you set on your MikroTik router before, that's what should allow you to now log in and get an actual interface that's probably a bit more similar and hopefully a bit more intuitive to router configurations that you've done in the past. So some important options to take a look at here is in the upper right. As you're looking through, you've got things like Quick Set and Advanced and Terminal. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between these just a little bit as we're doing this crash course tutorial, but most of the interesting things that you need, and part of the reason why we chose this, you can do a lot just right there off the initial Quick Set. And that's what will allow you to kind of scroll up and down, find everything that you need to find right here. And doing an initial configuration is actually quite intuitive and quite simple. Now, I do want to warn you here a little bit. I notice when you try to scroll up and down, but your mouse wheel is too far to the right, that's not actually a place where the actual scroll is. So make sure your scroll, yeah, you can kind of see the scroll bar here up as I sort of hover over it. Like that's where the scroll is. And so your mouse sort of has to be in the middle as you actually scroll. You're too far over to the right, it won't scroll. That was kind of an annoying thing. But anyways, it's still going to help us out a lot by allowing us to go down through these options. So because I already did an initial static configuration, you can see a lot of this stuff for some of my addresses, it's already been entered. One thing it is going to want is it's going to want to know your gateway. Where are you going on the external side? So I could try entering that. For the context of what we're doing here, I'm not actually routing any traffic out to the internet. So it's not like this is going to matter a heck of a lot for what we're doing here. But remember, on the day of the competition, we will be providing a router that will route you out to the internet. So you'll want to make sure you enter the IP address of whatever device it is that you want there. And that'll be part of the topology that we give you as part of your intro and welcome packet. You can always ask your Black team member, and they'll be happy to do that. Remember, we're also going to be providing some external DNS servers for you to check in as well. So those types of things would be very, very easy to add. You would just click your plus arrow and add in the 2 DNS servers or whatever it is that you got set up on the external side, on that 172 side. Again, for the context of a MiniHack, we don't have any of that stuff. But again, the MikroTik router does want an external gateway when you're doing the quick setup. So I'll click that button just to kind of make that happy. A lot of these other things I don't have to change. I've already got a good internal address. But some of the nice things we are going to want to check here is to bridge our LAN ports and enable NAT. All right, so those are 2 boxes I'm going to check. I'll just check these little radio dials here, and by enabling network address translation, that will allow my traffic to kind of come in through my 172.20 and go to my 192.168 by checking those. Yeah, I'll say apply configuration. All right, and then in the bottom right, you can see here, if I just hide my camera briefly, it just pops up with a save down here, just to let you know that the save did go through. And so whenever you're working with this thing, like your changes are going to be applied right away. So you shouldn't have to be like restarting the thing, rebooting the thing, like running systemctl to restart services. Like that's not a thing with this. Your configurations are going to just get applied. All right, so once I've done that, the real critical thing from a routing perspective is to look at port mapping. So if I click on the port mapping window, this is the interface you're going to be looking at when I want to be able to add in traffic that's going to hit my external side of the router and then get routed to some server on the inside. Again, hopefully really intuitive. You click the new button and say, what do I want this particular routing rule to do? So maybe I've got my TCP and my UDP traffic and I want to have something for www, right? This is web traffic. So maybe I'll say like www TCP. And anything that hits my router on port 80 is going to get internally routed to the website that I've got set up in Ubuntu. So that'd be 192.168.213.2. And that's listening on port 80 on the inside. All right. And then I could say, okay, great. And now I could make another one. Maybe I'll make another one for UDP. www-UDP. I'll make one for both TCP and for UDP. Set this to be, again, port 80, and also do the same IP address, 192.168.213.2, also going to port 80. Okay, so now either TCP, UDP requests, whatever it might be, if something hits on the external side for port 80, it should automatically get routed into the internal side. Did it work? Like I could go back to my quick set and just say, hey, yeah, all these settings are still here. Like you can easily get to that port mapping option. In a perfect world, like if that routing change got applied, what I should be able to do now is visit my router, 213.2.1 here, and I don't want to do it on port 8088. I just want to do it on port just port 80 for a normal HTTP request. And hey, look at that, the magic is working. So this is, of course, what's being hosted on my Ubuntu machine, and I've now been able to reach it from the external side, because this is my CLI external box. Did it check in with a scoreboard? Like if I take a look at here, haha, the web port is now open, and there's your routing magic that's now happened. Now, of course, and to finish things off, we don't have the correct content on my web page, but that, of course, was a simple change to be able to say, make sure you've got the right details in the right file. So why don't we just do that to make all the lights go green? As I come back over to my Ubuntu machine, something, of course, I have to do here is make sure that the team number is actually correct in my actual index.html files. So if you remember, that's in your var www html index sudo. Let's do sudo nano. There we go. Index.html. There we go. So this file is currently owned by team 0, and I need it to be owned by team 213. Let's do a Control X, Y, enter, and save that. And as I give the scoring server just half a moment to check in with things, what should now happen on the external side? Yeah, the web content is now correct. I could try refreshing that, and let's see. Yep, we refresh it. We now have the correct content. So remember, that's the basic idea of what is going to be tossed at you from a web perspective. It's, can you get your website online? Can you get it online with the correct content? Can you get it online on the right ports? Like that's all going to be really good stuff that you're going to want to realize and get working. So woohoo, we can still make all the lights go green with the MikroTik router. We didn't have to worry about any crazy long firewall commands or anything like that. And if we think back to working at least on the initial side of my MikroTik router to get things started, there were a few of these /IP address commands, add and print and things like that, and it was relatively simple. I want to toss a few others here just at the command line so you can see a few things just to not make you too scared by it and start to get comfortable with it. A few others you might want to check out would be something like IP route print. Starting to see, okay, now that I've done a little bit of that configuration through the GUI side, through the web side from my CLI box, I can start to see what some of my routing is set up to be. So that's really useful to start checking on, making sure things are correct. Something else I want to show is what if you added maybe too many addresses or the wrong address? Like some of that could be remediated through the GUI. But it is possible that if you ran like this IP address command, and let's say you typed in the wrong IP address, I accidentally typed 231 instead of 213. Is the MikroTik router going to do that if you hit enter on that type of command? Like, yeah, of course it is. And so by looking at this, you can see like it is possible you could have different addresses be added, of course, to the same interface. And that would be something that was added in error. So I do want us to show how by the command line, if you happen to have addresses that were typoed and you need to clean them up, this is something we can do as well. You can say IP address, and then instead of add, we can do remove. But you'd want to pay attention here to the number. So in other words, you notice off of a print, every one of your addresses is numbered 0, 1, 2. So in this particular case, I want to remove 2. So you're not typing out the full address. You would just say IP address remove 2. And then that's one way that you could go and get rid of addresses that were added in error. So again, looking through the GUI, maybe learning some more of these command lines, maybe digging through that wiki and maybe making a cheat sheet so then you can keep track of some of the ones that might be important to you. That would all be good stuff to do. One last thing I want to do here, and I want to show through the command line, is an IP service print command. I want you to start to understand that this particular command shows you on the MikroTik router what services are currently running in terms of access. And so did you realize that this particular router is running a telnet? It's running FTP. We saw the www on port 8080. It's also running SSH. You want to SSH to this thing as the admin account? You could. Your SSL command, you'll notice here in a moment, like let's try this. If I tried to SSL to 8729, this is one where the certificate out of the box is not going to be set up. So if I try 8729 using HTTPS, let me go maybe to let's do the external here. So instead of visiting the router by HTTP, let's try doing an HTTPS and just kind of see what happens. So if I wanted a secure login to this thing on port, oh gosh, what was the port again? It was on 8729. So 8729, oops, click in the box, 8729, what happens? It gives you an error. It says, hey, secure connection failed. We weren't able to actually log in by HTTPS, and that's because the cert isn't set up. So I'm trying to open the door here and have you start thinking, okay, there's actually a variety of ways you could access this device and interact with it. Is that entirely a good thing? What are some of the security implications to doing it? We logged in using admin on 8080 and got this really nice, simple to use GUI. HTTP, not encrypted. What would happen with the traffic if I went admin password and sent that? Oh, yeah, we should be thinking about that a little bit. Or just SSH. I mean, if you're going to be SSHing to your router and pivoting through it in the context of a competition, that's a great idea. That's very, very useful. But every single one of these things is going to be a potential attack vector as well. So these are things you're going to want to consider, not things I'm going to show in the context of this video. Maybe you want to practice these things a little bit and see. Clone out a MiniHack, try getting the basic routing set up, do the things I've done here, but maybe take it a step further and think a little bit about securing. Because as we go in, at least to this 2025 season, These are things that we're not entirely showing, and obviously Red Team is taking a look at this as well. So you'll have to think about this from an attack vector perspective against your router. That is part of the challenge. And so no more spoiling of secrets or telling you little things like that the Red Team might have in store for you, but it is going to be part of the competition this season. One last thing I want to point out to you is notice number 6, WinBox, 8291 WinBox. This particular tool is useful to know about, and MikroTik has created a utility to interact with their router and give you something very, very similar to the GUI, very, very similar to what we saw through the web page. They named their tool WinBox. Okay, so they named it WinBox. So what that means is if you click on this thing called WinBox, that is not anything to do with Windows. It's I know it's a little confusing, but no, WinBox is a tool that will allow you to log in to a MikroTik router. And so I don't have that utility loaded up here in the MiniHack, but perhaps on the day of the competition, you might see that. You might see a WinBox utility, perhaps on your Kali machines, and that will give you a way to also go and log in and get that GUI and see some of those options. So I do definitely recommend at some point getting logged in, using this GUI. It certainly is easy and should get you up and running a lot quicker than what we've seen in the past. And then you don't have to sit there messing with terrible, confusing networking commands that you had just one little typo to and things weren't working. But just realize like this does create some attack vectors, and you're going to want to be thinking about those passwords. And then think about, how am I using my password? Am I using it in a secure fashion? Well, this is nice. Maybe I don't want to bring that online in this particular way. I might want to bring it online some other way. Also realize, again, just to kind of open the door here a little bit, there is an advanced part of the interface when we're looking at things this way. And so you can take a look at all sorts of different information. If you click on something like IP, you can see like, yeah, there's a lot of different settings, a lot of different options. And these are definitely not the type of thing that I'm going to go over in a quick little video like this. But some of these are going to be great ways to break your router. Some of these might be good ways to secure your router. And we'll leave it up to you and your practice in the competition to see if that's a good way. And of course, we could just get a terminal as well through this. So just like we were accessing directly through the no VNC session, you can get the terminal here. So again, really nice little interface to know about. This is part of why we like these things. But this is also going to present some new challenges for you this season. So best of luck. Hit us up in Discord. Talk to your Black Team member during the competition. At minimum here during a mini hack, let's make all those lights go green, see how all that is. And also keep in mind that we always want to be coming back here to some of the basics and think about, okay, what might I think to do to actually secure the router, set this up a little bit further. But hopefully, whether it be routing your website, whether it be routing your DNS server, remember, because you'll have to route things like port 53 for your DNS, like all of those things are going to hopefully be relatively simple and straightforward, and everyone on your team will be able to understand how to contribute in that portion. But we're looking forward to another season, and let's see if we can put this tutorial into action. Okay, great.